or we sign the register on time. I heard this story from my uncle. It's short, but the only malicious compliance story I can remember hearing. So ours is a third world country, and the era when this story took place was pre-computer era. My uncle worked in a bank, and in those days attendances were recorded by signing in a register. Employees had to put the in and out time in the register as well at the start and end of their shift. Now, a bank can be a very, very busy place. Hence, even though employees tended to reach office on time, they would prefer to get straight to their workstations and would sign the register whenever they got a small window in their otherwise busy schedule. This worked fine for everybody, but also benefited the latecomers, early goers as well. So when management got wind of this, they published a notice stating that all employees would have to first sign the register as soon as they reached office. Well, sure thing they did. The next day, there was a long line in front of the register, all of the employees waiting patiently to dutifully put their signs before starting with the day's work. Everyone opened the register, slowly got to where her name was, signed it slowly, and then closed the register. The next person did the same. A bank normally opened at 8:30 a.m. That day took until 10:30 a.m. for work to kick in full capacity. Imagine the wrath of the customers. Suffice to say, the policy did not last long.
I can't drive anywhere without permission. Okay, I'll follow that rule. Maliciously. This happened when I was 16 years old and just got my driver's license. My parents had me run to the store to pick up some groceries. I stopped by my friend's house on the way back home for maybe 5 minutes to show him I got my license and I was out driving alone. It was a really fun moment in the life of a 16-year-old. My stepmom, Marian, freaked out. "We did not give you permission to drive to Bill's house. We told you to go to the store and that is all." I told Marianne and my dad that they had let me drive to Matt's house the day before, so I didn't think it was a big deal. They went unreasonable and laid down the unbenevolent rule that set up the malicious compliance. You are not allowed to drive anywhere. We do not give explicit permission for you to drive. Period. End of sentence. Just because you were allowed to do it previously does not ever give you permission another time. Ever. Fast forward 3 days later. My 13-year-old stepsister has been a jerk to me all day, and I'm sick of her BS. She goes quiet for about 30 minutes and then comes out all sticky sweet. "Hey Brian, it's time to take me to ballet." I've taken her to ballet 3 days a week since I got my license. It's basically one of my chores. But I see my opportunity to say screw you to all 3 of them at once. "Sorry, Tina, I'm not allowed to take you to ballet. The parents didn't tell me to take you, and I don't want to get in trouble." She screams, she cries, she begs, she threatens. She calls her mom and leaves a message. She calls my dad and leaves a message. Just like Steve Miller says, time keeps on slipping into the future. I'm not sure I'm brave enough to hang on to the bitter end and actually go through with it. I'm shaking, but I know I've got them dead to rights. I'll call back from the parents and the clock goes on past the start of her class. Stepmom comes home and Tina runs to meet her. "Tina, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be at ballet." I hear Tina tell her rendition of the story, leaving out how miserable she had been, and they go back and forth. Marian comes pounding down the hall and yells, "As God is my witness, you just wait till your father gets home." I had to stifle a laugh because I never really believed people actually said that. An hour later, Dad comes home and the 2 of them go running out to meet him and tell him how horrible I was. I wait in my room for the hammer to fall. About 10 minutes later, my dad calls down the hall, "Brian, would you please come here and talk to us?" "Well, Brian, you did it." "What do you mean, Dad?" "You got us all, and there's absolutely nothing we can do about it. Okay, let's make this reasonable for everyone." And they did. They agreed that they were over the top. They recognized that Tina isn't always very nice to me, and they spoke to her about that. I was allowed to have reasonable freedom if I was driving somewhere. Since I had good grades and had never been in trouble, I walked down the hall back to my room, back to my parents, with the world's biggest grin on my face.
My meal must be salt-free. This story is from a dinner party I hosted before the pandemic. I invited 6 folks, and shortly after the invites were sent, I received a call from Sally. Sally, not her real name, advised me that she was now on a salt-free diet due to medical reasons. She advised that at home she cooked without any salt and gave me a speech about how wonderful salt-free life was. I was skeptical and advised her that I would personally find it difficult to give up all salt. Was she sure she wasn't just on a low-sodium diet? Sally advised that unless her dish was salt-free, she wouldn't be attending, while telling her no was an option. I'm not that person. See my previous malicious compliance. I was pissed off at Sally 4 years of being difficult at the dinner table in restaurants. Trust me, there was always something wrong with her meal, or its preparation, or the flavor, or the waiter, or... With a smile so large you could hear it through the phone, I assured her that her request for salt-free was 100% going to be accommodated. On the dinner night, I prepped the meal. Sally was getting the same thing as everything else, with one critical difference. All of her food was prepped in separate containers, baked on separate racks, and seasoned with exactly the same flavors, sans salt. Dinner time, and my guest arrive. I have all of Sally's food plated on white plates. Everyone else gets gray plates. First round, appetizers, fried calamari with a lemon jalapeno butter sauce. This dish typically has salt in both the batter and the sauce. As Sally couldn't have that, I battered her calamari in salt-free seasonings and flour. Her condiment looked exactly the same, but was made with unslatted butter and no added salt. I placed Sally's plate in front of her first, and she immediately states she asked for salt-free. I assure her that her dish is salt-free, and I made sure to cook hers separate, and even use a different colored plate to keep it straight. We all sit to talk and enjoy the squid. Sally takes a bite and makes a face. Mine has no flavor, she exclaims. All of my other guests tell Sally it's divine, delicious, best they've had, etc. I smile at Sally and assure her that her dish was flavored exactly as everyone else. The only difference is that she received absolutely no salt. It's at this point that Sally has a moment of clarity. It's painfully obvious on her face. She realizes she can't complain about the lack of salt, as she's already told the table about her salt-free life. She also can't claim it tastes terrible if everyone else is raving about the food. She literally looks like she was about to cry at the table. As my guests enjoy their dinner, Sally is slowly doing the toddler plays with her food munch and pushing her calamari around the plate. After a few moments, she reaches for the sauce that I made for everyone else. Sally, be careful, the salt-free sauce is in the white bowl. That one has salt. He mumbles something about wanting to taste the difference before literally dumping the bowl on her calamari. He then exclaims how much better it tasted. You and I know that, of course, things taste better with salt. So this drama repeated itself over the main course of honey-roasted salmon with pine nuts. I also am no heathen and had both salt and pepper on the table for my guest. I'm not going to judge you for needing more flavor. Here we go. Sally takes a bite of her fish and once again realizes that it has no salt. She reaches for the salt shaker, and conversation stops. Another guest asks Sally if she was okay with adding salt to her food. She says that she can occasionally have salt. She proceeds to char her fish with salt sprinkles. I also baked some cookies for dessert. The dough uses a little salt. I made sure to whip up a separate batch of cookies wrapped to go for her. Salt-free, of course. When I handed her those cookies, the look of defeat that hit her face warmed my heart. Dinner is over. Everyone is happy except for Sally. I called her the next week to make sure she was okay, as she's consumed sodium at my party. Sally told me her doctor has removed her sodium restrictions and she won't need that accommodation at future meals. On the phone, I congratulate her for her good health. When I hang up, I laugh until my sides hurt. Salt-free life apparently doesn't taste good when the salt is actually omitted. No to any on a low or no sodium diet for their health. I commend you. Sally, however, wasn't actually on this diet. This is evidenced by her shock at how salt-free food tasted. I confirmed with her husband that she's never stopped using salt at home. Her salt-free claims were a ploy for attention that backfired tastefully. TLDR, Sally lied and stated she required a salt-free diet. She is defeated and miserable when forced to eat salt-free food. Common question, why are we friends? Sally is married to one of my best friends. As my friend is elected to stay married to her, I have tolerated her. I wouldn't call her a friend, but we are where we are. Comment. I'm loving the responses here. I truly empathize with those living with medically restrictive diets. Life is hard enough without that being added into the mix. This is funny, and I'm sharing it with Sally's husband. He needs to get some first-hand knowledge of all the reasons claiming false dietary restrictions just isn't okay. And I want to be clear, never tamper with someone's food. This MC worked because no harm could come to Sally.
Check out my other incredible videos.